whether it had been dinner or lunchtime for you, depending on time zone. So we are now at the coming towards the end of this Global Digital Conference, People and Planet, Faith in the 2030 Agenda. There's been a lot of discussion, and I have checked in a little bit with my colleagues who were in the other twinning sessions. I myself have been in the Sweden and Jakarta, Sweden and Indonesia session, which was a very interesting, a very good exchange, I felt like, with so many questions coming up. That's often the realizations that in conferences we might perhaps join to find out answers and get answers to all our pressing concerns and questions, and then we leave maybe with even more questions that we came in with. But that is the nature of life as conscious species to some extent. But we also do, I think, leave with both answers and also new types of inspiration and ideas. So I want to harvest some of those ideas and humbly ask my facilitator colleagues and co-creators out in the different locations to give us some of the core insights, outcomes, and if possible, because what would a conference such as this one be if we don't have any concrete action points? So to the extent that you have already talked about and harvested any such action points, that would be fantastic to hear about that and to exchange. And to comment on the innovative partnerships, any innovative new partnerships going forward. So I would like to start with South Africa, if I may. Francesca, you have been a part of this, both the planning and now, of course, the dialogues here during the past couple of days. Could you please comment on what were some of the core insights, outcomes, and action points from your end, and in this case, also commenting on the twinning sessions. You've had both participants from South Africa as well as from Amman, Jordan.
Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. It's great to come back together for this final session together and to share some of our outcomes from the South Africa Amman session. We were very fortunate we had a presentation to ignite our discussion by Josiami, who is part of the South African Council of Churches, and that was in our twinning session. And then we were really led very ably by Elizabeth to think about what are some of our key takeaways and also some of the challenges or barriers. And I'm just going to read a few of those to you, because after that we then spent some time thinking about what does that mean. So as our takeaways, so or action points rather. So really, I think there was a sense that there's so much commonality between the faiths, and that moving forward, we really need to take our core principles and use those as a guiding light to guide our approach going forward. And there was a real acknowledgement of the role that faith actors can play. Some of the participants were quite new to looking at faith as an issue on environmental issues, and they found that there was a tremendous opportunity here. Another one was around the capacity of faith communities to tackle these global issues, but in a local way. And I think that was one of the things that came out for us. How do we really translate all of this really inspirational conversations that we've had into local action, and how do we really start making a difference? And there's a lot of talk of unity and the need to bring ourselves together and act directly on issues such as climate justice. and to invest our time to build the kinds of bridges that we need to see between faith communities and the issues. So there were some experts in the room who had knowledge which we weren't able to dive into, but there's a sense that we really need to continue to work together going forward. So some of our takeaways were to organize amongst ourselves. So the people who were in the room, virtual room, to come together and to further talk about the ideas and think further how we can take things forward. And this would include bringing in other groups who are already working in these areas, because obviously we weren't completely representative, and there was an acknowledgement that others are doing great work on climate justice with faith-based communities and so on. And a real call to create more spaces, especially for youth and others who aren't actually getting the opportunity to learn how to engage with government, with decision makers, to really do some more mentoring and exposure on how to advocate. So we had quite a lot of discussion around what does it mean to advocate, how do we advocate, how do we address the sorts of blockages in political will that we're seeing in our region. And so we had some discussions around what could we do around that going forward. And then we had some really concrete things, including sort of areas of work around BRICS, around approaching our environment minister as a group, and making sure that we include youth. I think gender was also a very strong lesson for us from, you know, the global conversations as well, that gender has to be included, otherwise you're not going to address the issues. Sharing of data, so sharing more of knowledge. And then really making sure that when civil society is engaged in these inter-country discussions, that faith is represented, because we really think faith needs to be there when there's consultations going on. So that was really it from South Africa and Amman from our session this afternoon. We had a great conversation. It feels like there's a lot more hunger and interest in continuing. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we'll see. I might come back to you again in this conversation. But thank you so much for getting back to us with both those insights as well as the action points. It's always good to really take the next step as well. So thanks. And thank you primarily as well, of course, to all of the fantastic participants in joining us from across South Africa and from Amman and Jordan as well. So thanks a lot. And I would like to travel over to Indonesia, to Dr. Fachruddin. You've been working with us now for a few months in the planning of this, and despite the current situation and also some constraints along the way over these past couple of days, you have managed to join us with a group in Indonesia. And we now learned also today that the university from now on, from today, as I understand it, is going over to 100% online interaction and teaching. So would you, I can't at the moment see your video, but could you speak to us about some of the core insights and sharings and action points from your end?
Hello, yes.
Lovely.
Yeah. Good.
Excellent. Yes, we see you now.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to join this very exciting moment during this COVID-19 calamity in the world, that we are responding in the right time, and we are learn a lot about using this kind of technology As well, we from the university are thankful to Sida for asking us to join together to learn. We used to invite about 20 people, and they committed to come about 18 to 19 people. But soon as we opened the announcement from the government of Indonesia regarding the COVID-19, and the the government say that we have to slow down every activities in gathering with people and make a distance. So by that, and the second time, the decision, university also have their own decision to close the university. We have already a blended learning here at university since last year. This blended learning is 50% with meet in the class, and the other 50% will be in the virtual class online. So by this announcement of COVID-19, starting at the second time yesterday, we starting to be full 100 for this semester.
Yeah.
We also have to postpone some seminar as well as graduation ceremony. We have to sorry with that because of this COVID-19. But we are glad. Our university president was very exciting to see us because we are right in the room of where he's working on. We are a small university, but an old university.
Okay. Yeah.
He is paying attention by putting us, investing with these new facilities.
Yeah.
And this is good for us. And also, all the participants, I'm surprisingly learned a lot from the dialogue today and yesterday and before yesterday regarding the work, whether it's in the room or outside the room, because we're starting in our national hub at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we have two sessions. Every session we have two presentation. But we are not completely.
What did you find, like, throughout these past 3 days? What were some of the two or three golden nuggets that you had in your dialogue? Some insights, or outcomes?
Yeah, this is very exciting because all the participants learn a lot, including international. The national participant, they would like us to continue the real action. Like today, we just learned from the private sector. They just realize about our work, or also the faith group works on real action in. Like the establishment of Eco Camp in Bandung that have been facilitated for many youth, to make more aware of sustainable living, with response on school and faith leaders.
Yep.
And there are thousands of people have been. I think it's changing the landscape really. And they are also learning from us that we have a program such as implementing the fatwa in the Muslim perspective on several areas that could helping them to make more massive awareness implementation to the community at surrounding of the concession area of that private sector to work together, because they are not only helping them to avoid the degradation, but also they may have a productive collaboration, such as to enhancing the capacity of the local cleric to deliver a message of the fatwa, which is from the Islamic faith message on not burning, or it is haram to burning the forest.
Mm.
That's been certain learn as a commitment from them to helping
Okay.
for that in the further
And
further action.
and what was that precise commitment for help? How could that look like?
They want they are impressed with our work with training of trainer for the clerics.
Mm.
And because of cleric they're impacting, and because the cleric are there, and we have already some toolkits that ready to be implemented. So the problem is how we much more get a massive implementation to engage another clerics, because we have
Okay.
like 1,000 clerics at the grassroots level. It is in the point,
Yeah.
and they are staying there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for leading and facilitating that conversation, and to really pulling in the stakeholders. So in this collaboration, we've been talking about, like Josephine mentioned in the very beginning, talking about co-creation and a multi-stakeholder approach. We've been talking a lot, and we talked a bit in our twinning session today as well about the increased exchange and the need for exchange and collaboration between faith-based organizations and other civil society organizations. But of course that also goes between sectors, and you bringing up and also engaging the private sector, I think is a very relevant and highly needed initiative. So that's something that that can be one outcome as a role model from this conference as well, to bring the dialogue further. And I know that happens a lot within, from years ago with the Global Compact and other initiatives with private sector engagement now in the SDGs as well. And we need to take responsibility and ramp that up as well. So thank you for that initiative. And I would like to now, let's see, I want to go to Sarajevo, to Dževada. Are you with us?
Yes,
Yes,
I am with
excellent.
you. Hi, Ola.
Hi, Dževada. Hi, so good to see you again.
Yes.
I would like to hear from you as representing also the twinning hubs of Sarajevo and Nairobi. We know that, and we've been curious about to find out how your conversations have gone today after we had this initial global panel on the young leadership needed for transformative change. So with your focus in the hubs of youth and effective routes to action, what have some core insights been in your discussions, and are there any outcomes and action points even that you can mention from your discussions?
Thank you, Ola. In the first place, throughout all our discussions from the day one until day 3, all of us, we became much more aware that we need to have a holistic approach. Indeed, to consider that each of us, every creation, nature, humans, animals, that we all are an integral part of one organism. And we have to have this awareness, this consciousness, this perspective that if one part of it is somehow hurt, if there's any sort of disbalance, that the rest of this one organ, that the rest of this body must feel it and do something against it. So this is, sort of say, one, so if you like, theological or philosophical approach. But if you are aware of it on a daily basis, then your attitude towards your actions, towards your behavior will be different than before. Another perspective is that we have discussed is that we have to consider the planet Earth and whatever is on it like a religious building, if you like a mosque, like a church, and to consider, and if you could, the feeling that we have for a mosque, the feeling or the emotion that we have towards a church or towards a temple, towards a religious institution is emotional, and we consider this as sacred, and something that is sacred shouldn't be hurt, shouldn't be put in a disbalance, should be preserved, cultivated. And as well, this idea generally came up about this idea of green faith, or what sounds so good in so to say in Islamic terms, green deen. Deen in Islamic term means faith, religion. So and we have seen in our discussions that, so to say, a theological Christian approach is very similar, if not even identical, to the Islamic approach, to say that all human beings are stewards here on this earth. We all have our role to play. We have a responsibility. So this idea of stewardship, this idea of practicing or believing people, of believers, to always to call for justice, as well justice towards the nature. Usually this term justice is only relevant for people, for humans, or we should expand this much more, that justice needs to be given to not only to humans, but as well to animals, to the nature in general, to the environment, and this idea of balance. So these three pillars are very important, have been very important now, this idea, this consciousness of being that each of us are stewards, that we have to care for justice and to keep the balance, if you like, from, so to say, the God-given balance, mizan, to keep it the way. And this, all of these pillars ask for responsibility of each of us. So these are, so to say, now, this is one side, so very theological, but then our discussion was as well about, is there a contradictory between science, natural sciences now in this case, biology in the first place, and faith? And we have made the conclusion, and this was as well became clear in other discussions, that the faith narrative can fill the gap in science and should be treated complementary, not something saying, well, we are natural scientists, faith and religion, they don't have a place here, this is something different. No, I think this is very important. If we want to mobilize all the whole population, those who are believers, but as well non-believers, but to respect each other, to say, you see, in certain argumentation, faith can fully fit, because in the scripture that have been mentioned several times, in the scriptures, in the Bible, in the Quran and other scriptures, there is lots of evidence and lots of sources, lots of verses, directly, very clearly, there's no need for interpretation to be a theologian, very clearly calls for preserving the nature, water, air, rain, animals, and it's in even this scripture we talk about this balance. So this complementary role of faith in natural sciences. And then from, so to say, from a Bosnian perspective, when I collected information about my participants, there were two priorities: SDG 3, which is about ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being for all at all ages, and SDG 15, which is about protecting, restoring and promoting sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. So if we take this into consideration, I think these are as well, these two hints or these two focuses given by our participants from Bosnia show that the religious communities, the faith communities, should tackle these points or these topics in their activities, whether this is sermons, whether these are lectures given. And so now we're moving towards what action is. We have an interreligious council working here in Bosnia and Herzegovina for many years. And I think what is one of the next steps, very clear step that need to be done in Bosnia and Herzegovina, is to address the Interreligious Council and to ask them, and when we talk about Interreligious Council, these are the 4 traditional religions in Bosnia: Orthodox Church, Catholic Church, Jewish community, and Islamic community, to include environment into their activities continuously. Such the different other topics that they're dealing with, but environment should be, or climate change, environment protection should be an integral part of their plan. We need as well in Bosnia, because in the Bosnian context we have this communist legacy, this, so to say, still struggled how to fit faith in the public sphere, in school curricula, on a university level, in the public in general. And so we need to unite this, so to say, the secular and faith actors in Bosnia and Herzegovina for the benefit of environment. This would as well imply to adapt within the current educational system, to adapt curriculum which would allow more topics on environmental issues. But what could at least be done, if we include faith community, because we have religious classes in schools, to ask that within the textbooks in religious classes, to add topics, to add chapters on environment. In terms of youth, this is particularly has been mentioned within the resilience building, that youth would be very much open to find new ways, because usually youth has a much more positive and stronger energy to find new ways how to adapt to these new circumstances, to this challenge of climate change. But we need as well clearly that faith leaders adopt a narrative on environment. So far, the focus was not enough. So we need faith leaders who would much more when they address the audiences, when they have public speeches, when they are on TV, let's say, to address clearly the issue of climate change. This has so far been neglected, except, as we know, from the Vatican with the Pope, with his movement Laudato Si. Here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, faith leaders must address this much stronger. And as well, the issue of new partnerships came up. So we have to find innovative ways, new ways how to get partners, whether within our state, within our context. But this conference has taught us that we shouldn't look at borders. We should have networks and partnerships all over the globe. And I would finish my what I wanted to say right now with the quotation. The whole day we are following you, Ola, and behind you there is a motto of Sida, I guess. We strive to lead the change to end poverty. And if I may use this for our context, we strive to lead the change in environmental protection in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Ah, beautiful. Thank you. Wow, it's such a lovely transition. So we strive to lead the change. I'm going to come back to that in just a few minutes, actually. But I would like to maybe take that from you and pass that one round along to our friends again. So Francesca, you're still there, yeah?
I'm still here, yes.
Excellent. So with that sort of inspiration from Dževada, how would you say that? What's from what you said before as well? But what is the next step or steps that you see happening in South Africa and perhaps in Jordan as well in your conversation? That we can take with us?
I mean, there's certain things that we know that work. And I think Dževada did a great analysis there. And it was very interesting. I really enjoyed hearing what happened in their group. But there's certain things that we know that work. And one of the things that we have found that works really well is creating a multi-faith space on environmental advocacy. And there's a methodology called FLEET, which brings together faith leaders from different communities, sometimes regionally, sometimes in a country, sometimes on particular issues, and really takes them through an eco-justice consciousness conversation. It really is a peer learning space, because I think one of the things that we know is that people already have local solutions, but what they don't always have is have the tools to share what's happening, what they're doing. So sharing solutions that they're working on, or sharing problems. And then also, how do we advocate on that? So how do we get into decision-making spaces to influence there? And that's something that we see as being a very important part of civil society, bringing together different actors, just like this meeting, to think together and to find ways to respond that are appropriate. And also, one thing that's coming up that's really important for us in the African region, and I'm sure I can speak for Kenya as well, the climate change conferences, every 5 years, you know, they go around the continents, and next year the climate change conference will be back. The UNFCCC conference, COP conference, will be back here in Africa. And 10 years ago, when it was held in Durban, the COP, I think it was COP 16, it was 2011. There was a campaign that was done in partnership with our northern partners, and it's something why I want to bring it up in this space as well, this global space, called We Have Faith. And the We Have Faith campaign stretched it probably stretched from Europe into Africa, but it was right across Africa, a caravan of faith communities, faith leaders, faith activists, faith youth coming together and really speaking out in one voice around climate justice. And I feel really strongly that we need to organize ourselves and to really galvanize ourselves around that opportunity. The COPs are tremendously powerful places for us to speak out to the world leaders on what is acceptable to us as people of faith and what we want them to do. They need to have more leadership. I think one of the lacks that we see globally is a lack of moral leadership, a lack of speaking out. And there's been tremendous strides made with the Pope and other faith leaders speaking out, the imams and others who are really very senior in their faiths. I know the Anglican Church, the Lutherans, they're speaking out on these issues. And now we need to really see a much larger movement around that. So I know that the Vatican recently said this is a time of Jubilee, and it means that we must all, from the ground up, all of us engage and start to take seriously the issues that we're facing, find practical local solutions that are appropriate. It's not one size fits all. And engage with those opportunities. There's nothing so wonderful as coming together as a community and cleaning up a river, or there's a wonderful image of Zainab, my colleague, and some fleet members in the Karoo. They were in Graafrenet at the end of last year during a very, very severe drought. The dam was entirely empty, cracked. It's an image actually that went viral because it was so moving, but the faith leaders are praying in the dam. It's a very symbolic gesture around water and its importance and why we need to come together and join hands. Maybe not formally because we're social distancing at the moment, but virtually we need to join hands on these issues and bring back the sacred into the conversation, not be afraid. It should be the end of science removing sacred from the conversation, because I think, as we saw in one of our presentations, the rest of you didn't get to see, by a prof from WITS here, that water has consciousness. And it's a very interesting, some science has been done around this and the meditation and the impact that can have on plants. So you can all go and look up yogic farming. And so, you know, very rich discussions, very rich opportunities to engage and learn and be challenged in terms of our own, where we believe the end of faith is. So that's my contribution. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, thank you indeed for that. And the more of these examples that we examples of inspiration and concrete action that we collect and that we take part of and hear and exchange as a part of storytelling, as a part of sharing between us, I think the more action we can also inspire to. And I did see some nodding heads here in this room as well when you mentioned the We Have Faith initiative. So, and with that, and with the inspiration of, with the inspiration of the quote behind me, I want to try to give a little gift as well to all of you, the participants, before we have our final concluding remarks from some of our main contributors. And Iyad, you will be joining us there shortly as well. But before then, we're going to do a little bit of setup, but hopefully all things, going well. It'll be a fun surprise. So bear with me. We're going to set up the room. It's going to take about a minute or so, and then we'll see what happens. Ta 2 stycken. All right. Ha 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 ha. La 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 la. La 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 la. All right, we're gonna see if this works, and the limiting factor, the human factor in this case, is probably gonna be my voice. So, if it cracks, it cracks. It'll be as cracked as that dam that Francesca was just describing. Maybe, or maybe not.
Yeah. So, as Björn Ola told us yesterday, we should be the forest. We should not only lead the change, but also be
the change. Climate change, it's getting scary how the weather's acting strange. Like in Nairobi, there came no rains. The clouds are disappearing and the wells are drained. Beyond Nairobi, But the hard times are the times we must unite and realize we're on the same green tiny spaceship. Now is the time to open up our eyes, protect, restore and rearrange around the world as many millions rise to be the change. Be the change. To be the change. Be the change. Climate change, it's now a pattern, not just random some events. Just like in Bangkok, the rising sea and the sinking city, much too soon they'll meet beyond and in Bangkok. But the hard times are the times we must unite and realize we're on the same green tiny spaceship. Now is the time to open up your eyes, protect, restore and rearrange around the globe as many millions rise to be the change. Be the change. To be the change. Be the change. And in the case of Hannah Sound, we know there'll be abnormal amounts of snow. But what happens when the Gulf Stream's getting slow? We just don't know. We just don't know. Climate change, you can deny it, but it'll get you anyway. Like in Bogota, on drying slopes, the plants can't find the soil together anymore. Beyond Bogota, but the hard times are the times we must unite and realize we're on the same green time spaceship. Now is the time to open up your eyes, protect, restore and rearrange around the globe so many millions rise to be the change. Be the change. To be the change. Be the change. Be the change. Be the change. Let's be the change.
Så, jag kör direkt, Ola.
Thank you.
Let's be the change. I can't think of any better words to open our final concluding remark session. Let's be the change. In this final session, I will have the opportunity as one of the two facilitators for People and Planet and as a representative of the Swedish International Development Agency to give some final thoughts and remarks together with two representatives. We have Azza Karam with us that you met in our opening session. And also I will be reflecting together with Iyad that has been with us from the start as a co-partner in the organization of People and Planet, representing UNEP and the Faith for Earth initiative. So the three of us will be jointly reflecting together here. And before I start, I just want you, Iyad and Azza, can you just greet us with your voice?
Hello, hi everybody.
Excellent. And Azza, can we also hear your voice so we know that you... Yeah, if you unmute. Yes, I see you there.
There you go. Well, peace be upon you all. Hello.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. The journey that we have been through together has been a true adventure. And it started long before Monday, when we gathered up on the 16th of March. It actually started first as a dream and as a vision in our joint conversations between Faith for Earth initiative within the UN Environmental Programme and Sida and the Stockholm International Water Institute. And later, it developed into a global movement. And that was basically when we established our 6 learning hubs. And as Sida, we always stress that we have had enough of single events, single conferences, single workshops. What we need is structural, transformative change. So we have to see how our single events fit into the larger picture. So for us, it has been important from the start to stress local and national ownership. That's why, as for all of you participating in People and Planet, you have been together with your fellow stakeholders, friends, colleagues, actors in your respective country for national learning hubs sessions, where you have been able to particularly tackle social, cultural, religious, and political challenges within your respective country context. In addition to that, we have twinned you with another country to give you another regional perspective on a thematic topic. And in addition to that, we have built a movement, a process of change, bottom up, built on local actors in countries and twinned session for a global, creating a global momentum for change. It's not only change at the individual level, but also household level, community level, societal level, and global level. We have also stressed the need for a discursive turn. We need to embrace social capital, cultural capital, and spiritual capital. We can't have this single narrow focus on financial capital and materialism. The only way to tackle biodiversity loss, climate change, and our current pandemic in the decade of action is to embrace transformation, system thinking, co-creation, normative dialogue, all our guiding principles for People and Planet, but also these other dimensions of capital, cultural capital, social capital, and cultural capital. So now I would like to invite you, Iyad, in to give some of your thoughts. What are the key insights, points of action, and dreams for the future?
Thank you, Josephine. Brothers and sisters, good afternoon. Well, every time that I connect with faith leaders and faith-based organizations, I am amazed of the power of the word, the power of the leadership that faith leaders bring into the table. We have missed a long time not being connected to faith leaders and faith-based organizations. But it is about time. We are in crisis and we need to be up to the crisis and face it with leadership, the leadership that we aspire from faith leaders and faith-based organizations. Over the past 3 years of the, how old Faith for Earth initiative is, we have been connecting with faith leaders and faith-based organizations, and we have been trying to change the game and introduce innovative approaches to finding long-lasting solutions to all environmental issues that we are facing. And we have found that solutions are there. Solutions have been adopted and adapted by faith leaders and faith communities at the different levels. But they didn't have the platform. They didn't have the convening power. They didn't have the knowledge base that would be provided for them to connect science and evidence base to their theology and their scriptures that speak the same language. The commonality of all religions on environmental issues is unprecedented. And therefore, we need an unprecedented approach to tackle environmental issues. The Faith for Earth initiative is so much pleased and honored with this partnership with Sida. We are very happy that you have adopted the vision and the mission, and you believed in it, and you are taking it to different levels, to higher levels. So this partnership is there and will continue to be there, and will hopefully be the future norm that we will work together, not only with Sida, but also with all other partners. From UNEP's perspective, we established it as an initiative, but we are actually transforming it to a global coalition. And hopefully by the end of this year, we will launch the Faith for Earth Coalition, where we have the power of leadership, the power of science, the power of youth, the power of knowledge, the power of faith-based organizations, all teamed up to provide the solutions that we are all looking for to accelerate working and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030. And we all know that faith-based organizations and faith communities have actually been addressing all the 17 goals plus more goals in their own institutions for their own communities. But it is about time to realize that, look at today, at coronavirus, there are no borders, although borders are closed literally, but it's opening up global borders to work together, to fight the same fight, and to join efforts. This is exactly the way we need to think about climate change, about ecosystem destruction, about deforestation, and so on. So it is about time. The time has come. The train is fast moving, and we need to be on it and actually drive it in a very correct, right direction. I will stop here, but then later on we can indulge in more details. Thank you.
And before I let you speak, Azza, I just want to also add on that and say that some of the things that really struck me, touched me, transformed me throughout these 3 days is the power of innovative partnerships, and not least secular and faith partnerships. I can just witness here from what has happened in the Swedish Learning Hub, where we have a broad spectrum of partners, strategic partners to Sida, faith-based partners, secular partners, other government agencies, companies, and different type of actors, also academia represented here. And we have seen that throughout these 3 days, new partnerships have been established, nurtured, and developed. And yesterday in our Swedish Learning Hub, we went out in the forest and we embraced life and spirituality. And many of us felt the presence of nature and the presence of spirits around us. And what really touched me yesterday was the reality that we are all humans. And regardless if we come from societies that are labeled secular or societies that are labeled religious, we all carry this longing to be connected to Mother Earth, to our surrounding universe, and to the spiritual dimension in our lives. So I will be careful from today and after my experiences in the People and Planet to continuously divide, between faith and secular, between the secular world and the religious world, because I just realized throughout these 3 days that we all carry this longing and ability to connect. So now I hand over to you, Azza.
Wow. Okay. Give me 1 second. I hope you can all hear me, and I'm hoping now that you can also all see me.
Yes.
It is a great privilege and pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much to both Doctors Iyad and Josephine for that very rich series of reflections that have been shared. I am particularly, as I listen, there's a couple of things that come to mind. Having worked in this intersection between the secular development and foreign policy world and the religious, multi-religious development and foreign policy world, I've got a few things that I think have been echoed and many of you have spoken to in the course of the experiences that have been shared, I'm sure. And I just want to elucidate some of those with you. And literally, simply in a mode of candid, transparent reflection. So if I say something that seems to unnerve anyone or rub you the wrong way, please believe me, this is not the intention. I literally am thinking out loud with you. There's a few things that are probably, there are certain good intentions that all of us have that I think have been very beautifully articulated in so many different moments in time in the last series of conversations you've had. Good intentions are wonderful, they're terrific, and they're good that we have them. What is even more interesting and relevant, I think, today is that we can be a little bit critical about our own good intentions, is the ability to be humble about what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do this. There are many, many needs in our contemporary context, and they have been there for a very long time. Yes, we now acknowledge the irreversible nature of the damage done to planet Earth. It's hard not to. We're living the symptoms of this very, very viscerally. All of us. For once, we are all, as human beings, confronted with exactly the same set of challenges. There's no rich or poor, there's no safe or unsafe, there's no conflict and not conflict. Every single one of us is now confronted with exactly the same challenges. That, I think, calls for a certain amount of humility. And it's not the verbal tribute to humility, but it is perhaps a bit more self-reflexivity about how are we working our own worldviews, before we seek to criticize anybody else's. What are our own worldviews? What are our own certainties about how right we are, how just it is, how absolutely good our intentions are? Some of that self-reflexivity is a little bit missing. And I'm not saying it's missing from here. I'm saying generally, I think we're not self-reflexive enough. One of the things that engaging with the religious spheres in general, with whether it's theology or the various dogmas or the actual, what it is that religious communities, the oldest politicians, the oldest social service providers in this world, what is it that they do that may help us question slightly our deeply held certainties from a more secular, values-based perspective? But one thing I have learned is precisely that ability to have a little bit of self-doubt, not because we want to tear ourselves apart, which some of us are very good at, but because we want to just be questioning. Part of what I've learned from some religious organizations and communities, by no means all, some religious actors, by no means all, is this need to be humble. This ability, the second skin is a little bit of humility. Because there's a recognition, perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps it's because there's a recognition that we are all servants to a higher purpose. We are not the gods, or at least some of us believe we're not the gods, and religious actors often come at it from a perspective of being servants and maybe not necessarily being gods. Although I dare say some do think they're gods, those are not the ones I'm talking about. So humility, the value, the intrinsic value of humility, to start to question a little bit how it is that we see the world and whether our methodologies, whether our approaches are necessarily absolutely flawless and the best and the only. And I think that questioning is deeply healthy for all of us, but it is particularly healthy for those who come from a tradition of always being the go-to parties, whether it is go-to, as you were saying earlier, whether it is go-to financially, whether it's go-to for other human resources, whether it's go-to for the usual go-to people, governments, actors. A little bit of humility on their part, but also on ours, would not be harmful. I think it might be just good. In that vein, it's probably worthwhile remembering that the very first conference on climate took place in 1979, which for those of you who are born after then might seem like, oh my gosh, does that even exist? But actually for those of us who were born long before that, is actually phenomenal. It's 1979, the first climate conference. And guess what? There were quite a few religious leaders and actors in that conference. So some of us think we've rediscovered the realm of religion now. In truth, the realm of religion is what has discovered our existence on the secular margins of human life a few short years ago. Indeed, we are the secular values-based are actually the new actors in this global space, because the global space, and I'm not looking at Europe, the global space has always been populated. The indigenous to the global life cycle of humanity, the indigenous to the global life cycle of humanity are the religious. The first footprints on this earth actually came from and within religious institutions. What we are trying to do, what many of you have been speaking to and engaging with, is not this discovery of religion. And oh my goodness, how important is it that we now work religious and secular? I mean, welcome to that realization, indeed. But there's an added value here that humility might force us to reconsider. A little bit of humility might force us to reconsider that we're not talking simply about building bridges between the so-called secular and the so-called religious. We are actually, or we should be, in a space where we need to question how these bridges have already been built. In this case, at least since 1979. Perhaps rediscover who came in the 1979 era and who didn't come from this realm of religion. And we might come to a realization that we have been deliberately exclusive, even more ways of certain religions and certain cultural identities and certain ethnicities, that we have been exclusive of them in the name of inclusivity. Just a way of being able to use the humility lens to question that which we hold so dear, not because it is important to question all the time and to be self-doubtful, but because it is important to be humble. That is important. That's what I have learned from working with religious actors, that humility means that self-reflexivity is a must. It's not a luxury, it is a must. And if we were to look back in 1979 at who was there from the religious realms and who was not there, we would find that some of our religious voices, some of the biggest religious voices in today's world, still remain relatively silent, including today in the way that we engage and the manner in which we engage, even though we think we are engaging with everyone. There are some voices that are louder than others. And that interreligious, multi-religious, multicultural, because you cannot prioritize religion in culture. Religion is part of culture. If we acknowledge that, we also understand that the indigenous peoples have as much wisdom to share as anyone else. in the name of culture, in the name of religion, in the name of actually saving the earth. So a little bit of that humility might get us a long way towards the inclusivity and the transformative power and all the wonderful wordings that we've heard that I know each one of you is deeply committed to. We also need to make sure that we right size religion while we scale up our partnership impact. Yes, we have discovered religions, or thus secular actors. We have discovered the religious. We're discovering still the multi-religious. We think we've got it all, but no, we haven't. We could just look at the world, demography, religious, and how we structure our meetings, and we'll find that we could probably do just a little bit better. But we need to actually right-size religion. Yes, religion, spirituality, absolutely critical, absolutely foundational, not alone, not the whole answer, not the only answer. We need to right-size the religious while scaling up the capacity of multi-stakeholder partnerships globally and multi-stakeholder analysis in our own minds and an ability to be inclusive, including of those who may not agree with us at all. But that inclusivity, that radical inclusivity, we still have to learn. We haven't mastered. And no amount of new partnerships around the world is going to give us that. But perhaps we're at the moment in time where we can review, because we're all in a moment of similar crisis and the color of our skin and the color of our passports really doesn't matter. Perhaps this is a moment of critical humility that we all need to do in order to be radically inclusive, including of those who disagree. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Azza. And I have a follow-up question for you, because what I can conclude myself is that through and over these 3 days, we have managed to broaden the global normative dialogue to include new actors and new voices. And I know that you and I have been engaged in a conversation over the last decade. How are we going to deal with the fact that majority of change agents within faith traditions are followers and members on the ground, but so often it's only the top religious leadership that is being heard? In People and Planet, we have now transformed this challenge into a new opportunity to bring in new voices. Over the last 3 days, we have had great youth representation, not least to mention the great initiative by UNEP to sponsor youth delegates to all the learning hubs. We have had great representation of women. We have had great representation of sexual minorities, all types of groups, including indigenous peoples groups, different diverse faith traditions over the globe. So to me, this is in fact revolutionary, that we have opened up the normative dialogue around our current environmental crisis to bring in and broaden the voices. So Azza, what do you envision today with this insight that we now have the tools and the digital platforms and the knowledge and the capacity to bring in more voices? And what will that mean for the nexus of faith and environment?
You reminded me that and I do apologize that I did not begin by congratulating you and Dr. Iyad and everybody on this wonderful, amazing platform for this huge achievement. So yes, I stand corrected. Absolute congratulations on the revolution that you have effected in your realm. The normative dialogue has actually been open between the religious and the secular and the young and the indigenous and the women from different traditions within the space of religions for peace for the last 5 decades. 50 years. It's a good idea to try to identify where centers of knowledge and wisdom have existed and to link up and tune in with them. It isn't enough to have technology that allows us to speak to each other today and feel the power of this amazing gathering across the world, literally. That is wonderful. But technology also enables us to tap into existing networks of revolutions that have taken place over the course of human existence. And it's always valuable to be able to dig deep into the existing wisdom as we try to lift up the new, or what we believe to be the new. Often there is a disconnect between that which has been happening in different realms of the world that we are not necessarily aware of, and then what we do that we think is absolutely phenomenal and magnificent and is new. There's often a disconnect. And I think technology can certainly help to do that. And what you're doing here is a fantastic example of just how amazing technology can be in bringing all those voices together that are transformative and radical and revolutionary and all that. I think it takes humility, again, to be able to understand that there's already a legacy of life, because we're not, I mean, okay, some of us, of course, some of us are geniuses. I grant you that, of course. All of you are geniuses. I'm not a genius. And therefore, because I'm not a genius, I tend to like to see what else there is around me that I may think I've discovered, but actually was already there for some time. And that takes a little bit of self-doubt, humility, call it what you will, self-reflexivity. But I think when we do that, when we think what else has been happening around us, that we can harvest more and become part of, or link up to, or learn from the lessons of. And that's where then technology will help us to connect and glean information and knowledge. But the ability to say, I'm going to look and see where else this amazing stuff may have been happening already, and what I can learn from it so that I can empower, magnify, scale up, that ability isn't a technological capacity. That's a human humility capacity.
Thank you so much, Azza, for reminding us that People and Planet has been an event of great importance, but it is only a piece in a larger puzzle. And it's all about actually for us to be able to connect the dots. And throughout these 3 days, we have been relating back to a lot of ancient traditions, faith traditions, spiritual traditions that we can find in our respective own culture or physical place or in our surrounding nature or within the lines of our families, etc., etc. So thank you so much, Azza, for enlightening us all that what we do is a piece in a larger puzzle. And to find wholeness and to reconcile with Mother Earth, we need to be humble and to see that there's no quick solutions. There's no single event that can solve the current crisis, but it's all about understanding our place in the larger universe, to reconcile ourselves at individual level with Mother Earth, with our surrounding and our human relations, and to basically try, all of us, when we come home and continuously stay home, for those of us who have participated from our laptops, to see how this fits in to the larger picture. So thank you so much, Azza, for your wisdom, for being with us, for standing with us. Now I would like to come back to Dr. Iyad. I know that we have over these past 3 days, we have made a lot of conclusions on insights from the panelists, from the keynote speakers. And could you pick a couple of quotes or specific points from some of the voices that have been raised in the People and Planet event that have had a particular impact on your own life and on the Faith for Earth initiative?
Thank you very much, Josephine. And again, thank you, Azza, for your leadership and for your mentoring that I have enjoyed over the past 3 years. I very much appreciate that. Well, a couple of points that I would like to make at this stage, and then probably later on reflect on others. 2 points that have attracted my attention. First of all, it is true that so many people are doing so many things. And our problem is that we know that we don't know. There is a lot of knowledge out there with faith-based organizations working in local communities, adopting solutions that have proved to be successful in tackling environmental issues, in reforestation efforts, in using sustainable agricultural methods, in providing energy or sustainable energy for local communities. But when you have that isolated in a certain community without being advocated to other countries, other religions, other organizations, it continues to be a standalone initiative and serving its local people. I don't think this is the time that we can, live with such a thing. Every successful effort that is out there, we need to know about it, and we need to adopt it and adapt it to our situations. So this is very much a call for a central or a multiple knowledge nodes that are connected centrally, that can provide the global community. And you are talking, Josephine, about technology. Indeed, we do have the technology and we should use it. Artificial intelligence, for example, the Internet of Things, why it is not available for a certain farmer in a local community to get the knowledge of experienced people who have adopted these approaches. And this is doable. And this can easily be adopted. So a knowledge platform that provides us with the knowledge that we need, a mapping exercise of what is out or already out there, who's doing what. This is a must. That was a very loud call from the participants of this conference. The second one is the need for changing the paradigms in our educational systems. We know that young people are already the leaders of today. They are leading the change. And in 5 or 10 years, or even after, when we celebrate, the achievements of the 2030, all of the young people of today will be the people who are controlling and governing our world and international systems. So the education system that we have today is not innovative enough to enable innovative thinking, to enable adoption of systemic thinking and approaches that goes beyond only copying and pasting and listening and performing as we have listened. So we need to work on educational systems, and the power of faith in this case is that 65% of schools in Africa are owned by faith-based organizations, 50% at the global level. We are talking about thousands of universities who are owned by faith-based organizations. So we do have the power. We can immediately and adopt systems that would, integrate the commonality of the interfaith thinking and the ways to adopt approaches, solutions that are trusted and have been experienced on the local level, and provide that to the global community. So those are two things that have attracted my attention. But one thing is common to everybody is networking. And the People and Planet Conference is one of the powerful, and I am amazed of the technology and how cleverly you mastered it. in such a meeting. The global meeting, the twinning, the individuals, it is amazing. I did not actually expect that, but it is so heartfelt. Congratulations for mastering it. And I am subscribing to any capacity building workshop that you organize. So this power is there. So networking, yes, I know that people have been repeating challenges, the same challenges we keep hearing in every workshop, in every conference, the same. But with such a platform, with such a technology, we can put all of that on the web, and people, before joining a conference, they can go there and learn, okay, yes, we have discussed these issues, let's move on, let's take other challenges, let's try other approaches, and so on. So networking is so important, and we need to capitalize on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now my co-facilitator colleague Ola will join me here, and we will round up with final comments. And I just want to come back to the 4 guiding principles that we have that guided us in the preparation, design of People and Planet, when we established the learning hubs in the respective 6 countries a couple of months back. And I really hope that you will use these guiding principles continuously in your continuous work, really to turn our sense of urgency into delivery in the decade of action, and to continuously apply a system thinking approach, that you dare to continuously embrace complexity, and that we can invite more people into the normative dialogue around climate and environment. And in this event, we have managed to bring more voices in, but there are still many actors and people and voices that are excluded. So let us all take our responsibility to broaden the normative dialogue. And finally, let us make sure that in our new era of digital conferences and meetings, to apply the principle of co-creation and participation, so we don't make ourselves passive in digital conferences, but that we ensure in our methodologies that we really give room for everyone to be heard.
Yes, I agree completely with all that's been said, and I want to also stress that making this happen together, and this and also the perseverance that I feel that all involved in the facilitators. I'm very humble to the activity and the initiative from all my fellow facilitators around in all the hubs. And that is, I think, something to model on. Whenever you, because over this coming period, we're going to need to, by necessity, we're going to be forced to do digital meetings because we're not going to be able to meet in person as much, nor in national context actually, but let alone international context. But make sure in all of the arrangements that you co-create and you build leadership, multi-stakeholder leadership. So I want to encourage all of us to, building on what Iyad just said around networking, keep these contacts with you. If there's, if you want to share your good initiatives, your good examples of actions that you're doing, of campaigns that you have going, please post them on the Padlet. We're going to get that up and running again, and make sure that that's a platform that we can use together. You can also, if you have any questions, contact your hub coordinator, your respective hub coordinator, if you need help with getting things up there and sharing them. Or getting in touch with someone in specific that you've heard across the hubs but haven't been able to connect with because we've used breakout rooms, etc. You can type in the chat if you're joining digitally right now and want something in particular. Andrew is ready to receive all the comments there. So, and also, if you want to share some of what's been going on in these discussions over the past 3 days, the streaming is available, and that's one of the things to build on what Josephine just said. We've been wanting from the get-go here to get more voices in the room. And, as we've come back to over and over again, one event can only do so much. So obviously there's millions and billions of people whose voices haven't been in this room. But if we can be the drops, the rings on the water, and to spread the word and to create your own contexts and similar discussions, that is amazing. And one way of doing that can also be to share the streaming from these events. Not only making it more accessible in participation in the actual event, but also making it accessible in sharing outside of the actual event. So that's why we didn't do only a live participation only, but actually it's also archived and available afterwards. So the last point I want to make, and this is also building out on what Dr. Karam was sharing with us before, the humility. I want to share something that I heard in one of the breaks. We go around and we talk a lot about changing the world. We got to make the change or be the change, as we sang, indeed. But how about if we're talking about faith and higher powers and Mother Earth, how about being of service to the larger scheme, the larger plan, if you will, and being of service to, not necessarily changing the world, but being of service to the world in a way that is in harmony and in balance with the world and the earth and the planets and humanity. So that is a call to lead the change, but also to follow. So the humility there, follow initiatives that you find that are good, that you haven't come up with yourself, but that you find are worthwhile, and lead the ones that you find are missing.
Yes, and we are coming down to our last minute before we're going to close down People and Planet. So I want to extend specific thanks to all of you around the globe that worked pretty much night and day to make this happen. First, I want to once again address the key organizers of People and Planet. As you all know, you have heard a lot about Sida over the last couple of days, but we have worked in partnership with UNEP, United Nations Environmental Programme, and the Faith for Earth Initiative, and the Stockholm International Water Institute, and the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency. So I really want to extend, as from Sida's perspective, our deepest thanks, and this we could never have done on our own. So these partnerships have been absolutely crucial. Secondly, I would like to say that in each of our 6 countries, we have had local organizations, strategic partners to CV, UNEP, and Sida. And all of you have worked hard, not only to organize and set up and host the learning hubs, but you mobilized volunteers and you've been working on the technical platforms, translation, so much work. So thanks to all of you. And finally, I want to thank you all as individual participants in People and Planet. Thanks for prioritizing this and for giving time in your life to raise your voice, but also, as Ola just mentioned, to listen in to others and to really take this time in the midst of the pandemic to see what is the way forward for all of us. My final input to you is to encourage you all. I know we are hundreds of people now watching and engaging, to post a social media reflection. Doesn't matter if it's Twitter or if it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever platform. A final reflection from all of us using the hashtag People and Planet.
Thank you so much, and blessings to all, and peace as well.
Yes.
And with those words, yeah, thank you for these days.